Since Season of the Haunted launched, there has been so much experimentation and learning of new builds and mechanics. I spent a lot of time over the past week finding the absolute best way to build hunters for Solar 3.0, and today I'm going to show you all about it. I've nailed down an incredible, well-rounded build for hunters that excels in in-game content and performs incredibly everywhere else in the game. We're going to dig through it piece by piece and break it all down, and towards the end of the video I will also show you some alternative options as well, because there really are a few different ways that you can build this depending on your preferences. There will be a dim loadout link in the description to help get this set up on all your characters, but I highly recommend watching the video in its entirety so you understand all of the moving pieces. The build I am showcasing today centers all around Blade Barrage and Star Eater scales. If you didn't know, this is now the highest damage super in the game, and it's not even close. You will hit for upwards of 630,000 damage when you have ×8 Feast of Light with Star Eater scales. The next closest super to that is Thundercrash Titan at around 550k, and that's only with Cuirass of the Falling Star. Star Eater scales does of course require us to pick up 8 extra orbs of power after we have our supercharged, and each orb will bump our super damage higher and higher. The other benefit of Star Eater is that regular orbs give us much more super energy than normal, making it easier to get that ×8 Feast of Light. With all of this in mind, we need a build that creates as many orbs of power as possible, as frequently as possible, and luckily with Solar 3.0 on Hunter, we have access to a very easy way to make extra orbs. Let's start off looking at the subclass. We are of course running Blade Barrage. For our dodge, we will use the new Acrobat's dodge to give ourselves the Radiant buff. This is currently stacking with other damage increasing sources, but we'll cover that more in just a minute. Use whatever jump you prefer, but as for our knife, we have some options. Knife Trick is fantastic for building stacks of Scorch on enemies, but can be inconsistent in higher end content when you need to land that killing blow with the knife. The alternative would be the Weighted Knife. This causes Scorch targets to immediately ignite, which is very powerful, and it also gives us our dodge back when we get a precision kill. Personally, I prefer the Weighted Knife, but it does require you to get those precision hits. For our grenade, I have found Thermite Grenade to be an excellent source of Scorch. You can really use whatever you prefer, but I see the grenade as more of a Scorch tool than anything else now, and Thermite has a shorter cooldown than something like the Solar Grenade. You can also do sort of a Solar Wombo combo where you throw down a Thermite Grenade, Scorch a target, and hit them with the Weighted Knife to immediately ignite them. For our aspects, we are running Knock 'em Down. This is crucial for our Blade Barrage as it adds more knives to the barrage, increasing our damage by a ton. This also makes it so that when we are Radiant, any knife kill, precision or not, will refund our knife immediately. Next, we will use Gunpowder Gamble. After getting 6 solar kills of any kind, we will then have an improvised explosive that we can toss out. This doesn't consume our grenade and acts as a completely separate ability. You can shoot the explosive mid-air or let it explode on its own after a short duration. It sticks to surfaces, and it causes an absolutely massive ignition that deals really good damage. The keyword here is ignition. This counts as a solar ignition, which will be very important when we select our fragments. The fragments are equally important here. First, we are taking Ember of Beams. This gives +10 intellect and makes our super have better target acquisition. This is important for Blade Barrage, so we land as many of our knives as possible on our intended target. Next, we take Ember of Torches, where powered melee attacks against enemies makes us and nearby allies radiant. This goes hand in hand with our knife selection and Knock 'em Down, and gives us a second method of getting that radiant buff. The most important fragment here is Ember of Wonder. Rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions creates an orb of power. This also gives +10 resilience. Our Gunpowder Gamble explosive triggers this fragment, and it's beyond easy to get multi-kills with that explosive. It's basically a guaranteed orb of power each time to feed into our Star Eater scales. I know that's a lot of explanation, but every choice here is 100% intentional and functional for this build. Moving on to combat mods, these really flush out the build and make it so we aren't just a one-trick pony. Starting off, we want to make sure we are using Harmonic Siphon on our helmet. This makes solar weapon kills spawn orbs of power, which is critical for using Star Eater scales. Next, we want to use Explosive Wellmaker. This makes our explosions spawn a solar elemental well. This will proc off of Gunpowder Gamble and anytime we can ignite a group of enemies. We will also use Font of Might, which gives us a solar weapon damage boost for 10 seconds anytime we pick up a solar elemental well. Next, we will take Elemental Charge. This grants us stacks of Charge with Light every time we pick up an elemental well, and to use those stacks, we will also take High Energy Fire. This grants us a weapon damage boost on all of our weapons, and it's important to note that this does stack with Font of Might and the Radiant buff. It is multiplicative and gives us up to an 85% damage boost when we have all of them rolling. We will constantly have some form of damage boost going between these three different options, but when you get them all going together, you do so much increased damage, it's incredible. The next slot is kind of free, and I am using Radiant Light as I prefer the plus 20 strength that it can give, and it's really beneficial in in-game content for giving our allies Charge with Light anytime we cast our super. Finally, there are two mods that we want to take off of the seasonal artifact. The first one being Flame Harvesting. This makes our solar exotic weapon Final Blows create elemental wells, and for this build we are using the Skyburner's Oath, and it will be generating free wells for us constantly with this mod. The other mod will be Solar Fulmination. This increases the damage and radius of all of our solar ignitions, making it even easier to use things like Gunpowder Gamble and improving our regular ignitions greatly. If you prefer, you can use the mods on your leg armor that grant benefits from picking up orbs. This will proc constantly due to the nature of the build and are very helpful if you have room for them. Now let's quickly touch on our ideal stats and weapons. Resilience got a massive buff this season and now grants up to 40% damage reduction at 10 resilience. That's insane. If you're doing any sort of in-game, I highly stress aiming for 10 resilience over everything else. 8 to 9 is fine as well and will give you decent resistance, but beyond that, you want to prioritize mobility, strength, and discipline. It's up to you what is most important in regards to your cooldowns. For our weapons, we are using Skyburner's Oath. This weapon got a great buff this season as well. It now scorches targets when you fire it from the hip, and it's now hit scan when you ADS. It feels really great now and pairs perfectly with Flame Harvester to generate tons of those solar elemental wells. I recommend a solar heavy weapon to synergize with all of these buffs, and the reprised fixed odds machine gun in the dungeon can also roll with Incandescent for further solar synergy. It's a really great option if you manage to land it. Use whatever special weapon you prefer in the kinetic slot. Snipers are great for in-game content. Now, if you are doing more generalized content like the public events on Leviathan, Strikes, or Gambit, you can easily swap Star Eater scales for Shards of Galanor. This will cut down the damage of your Blade Barrage, but you will get it much more frequently, and it's great for content where that huge damage isn't totally necessary. So if you're doing something like a raid or a dungeon, maybe even a Nightfall, or if you just like seeing a big damage number from your super, Star Eater scales will definitely fit this build perfect for you. And if you're doing more general content like Nightmare Containment or chest farming on the Leviathan, maybe some Gambit, Shards of Galanor is a fantastic option there as well, so you can get that super back much quicker. Either way, this build will serve you all season long, no matter what type of content you're going into. You can always swap that exotic around whenever you see fit. But that's going to do it for the build, guys. I tried to keep it short and sweet. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. Solar 3.0 on Hunters can be really complicated and difficult to synergize. It took me a while to sort through all the different combinations out there and put this all together. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful, and if you did, do me a favor and leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Your support brings me one step closer to my dream of doing content creation full time. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next one.